what were left from World War I are personal stories and also photographic images. And this is exactly what we're going to see from this. After all, the project is called Lasting Memories. In some ways that reflects the stories and what we're trying to tap into from the past, where there's no physical result from this long term. It's purely those memories that will hopefully stay in people's minds. We collected over 48,000 stones, and we did that in the area next to the harbour arm, and we had about 150 people help to collect the pebbles, and we did it over several days. Seeing stones being taken off the beach, people sometimes get quite protective about that. Obviously, you're not allowed to take stones off the beach, but we did have permission from the Folkestone Harbour Company, who we were working with on the project. When we started the project, we were looking around about 20,000 stones to do our pebble poppies. But when we went down to the beach and we were doing our calculations and allowing we were going to do an 8th poppy in Belgium as well, we changed our calculations and over doubled that. So suddenly there was a huge amount of work, but Rachel from Gallery 66 came forward and offered us her space, which suddenly meant that we had a base to work out of instead of trying to paint in our houses or trying to get workshop space as and when, to having a sort of dedicated space, which was amazing. And not only could we do the painting, but also we could store this vast amounts of pebbles, which was great at the start until we realised the amount of pebbles coming in meant that we were filling that space up really quickly.
People sort of came in, I think, with the intention of maybe doing 1 or 2 pebbles, and a lot of people were saying do 100, 200, you know. And a big range of people. We had a lot of tourists visiting that sort of didn't necessarily know anything about the local history. It was just a fantastic opportunity just to meet so many people and to be able to sort of provide the community with a project that everybody could get on board with and sort of work towards a common goal that was fun at the same time.
A lot of people thought that it all ended in 1918 with the signing of the armistice, but it didn't, because the chaps were still serving, families were still apart, people were still dying. We wanted to do something, and we were very, very lucky that when Ben and Angus came to us with this idea, we just thought, yeah, this is such a tremendous local project to do in our own community. Having worked around Kent for our first 2 projects, it was nice to come home and to do something for Folkestone.
There's about 12 schools, but also lots of other youth groups as well. So we had scouts and guides, various guide groups helping as well.
Most of them actually approached us in the end. We sort of solicited helpers initially, but it quickly sort of gained a lot of steam, particularly on social media. Luckily, Castle Hill School contacted us and we had 1 gap left, which we were able to fill with them, which is quite nice to be able to get some more kids involved. Range of schools in Folkestone and Dover, one in Lymm as well, Lymm Primary. And as the process went on, we sort of started off quite basic sort of workshops with all the kids around a table, a bit of a sort of lead up to what the project was about and what we were going to be doing, and then going through painting. And by the end, I think we sort of got it down to a T, got quite a sort of strategy in place, almost like a production line of sort of small groups at a time. And it gave a lot of kids maybe don't necessarily get opportunities to take part in projects like this a chance to contribute to a project that is hopefully remembered by them and by the community in general.
So the Belgian poppy was one of our themes of the 7 poppies, which reflecting the gap between the signing of peace and the armistice. Belgium was very important to Folkestone because this is where the Belgian refugees and the wounded Belgian soldiers first landed in October 1914. And Folkestone fishermen were actually the first people to welcome the Belgian refugees into this country. We wanted to do a poppy, obviously focusing on Belgium, and then through my times with the Belgian Wallonia Tourist Board, we managed to get into Mons Memorial Museum. A few miles away from there is a cemetery where the first British soldier and the last British soldier to die in the war are buried, and they're only buried a few hundred metres away from each other.
On the Thursday afternoon and the Friday morning we laid this extra poppy, but unlike the poppies in Folkestone, this one was made not by designs but they were letters. And the idea was that those letters spell out the first names of Belgian refugees that came to England during World War I.
We got back from Belgium and immediately sort of went straight into preparation for the weekend itself. And I went to work on the historical information sheets that was going to go at the base of each poppy. And Angus sort of spearheaded the moving of pebbles from the shop and from Shepway Close Centre, all the places where they were all being kept, and taken down onto the yard owned by the Folkestone Harbour Company.
We had a team of 20 that turned up around about 7 in the morning, and we started to shift the stones down the boardwalk to the location where we wanted to construct the poppies. What we'd have done is come up with a grid formation for the design for the poppies. So lay those onto the beach, had paper designs with us, and we matched those designs. We did the outer edges first in black, and then we moved the grid down, and as the grid became freed up, then people would follow, add in the designed red stones into the spaces. We also had effectively the other half of the Belgian poppy. Again, there were letters, but this time these were the letters of the surnames of the Belgian refugees.
We chose the 7 stories specifically because they would be easy to research. One of our strands is the VAD, and the Red Cross have this fantastic resource which is a free online website which you have all the stories. They're cards, and from the cards you can learn so much. We chose things that could be researched in the newspaper because that's another free resource that people could use, because we knew we wanted to work with volunteers, and it was important that our volunteers had the proper resources and could carry on after we'd finished the project, and that anybody else could carry on after we finished the project. So that's really why we chose things which could be researched through the resources which are freely available.
Over 250,000 refugees from Belgium passed through the port of Folkestone during the First World War. In just one weekend in October 1914, over 50,000 refugees arrived in Folkestone. Some of the refugees in Folkestone joined the Red Cross and the Voluntary Aid Detachment to help local hospitals with the wounded soldiers. After the armistice, most of the refugees returned home, and people of Folkestone held fundraising events and sent donations of clothing and household goods to the returned refugees in Belgium. Over the first 3 months of 1915, 40,000 soldiers from the 2nd Canadian Contingent were transported to Folkestone, as well as being stationed at Shorncliffe Army Camp. Some of the soldiers were staying with local families. The locals welcomed and liked the Canadian soldiers, who would march through the streets, play music at bandstands and in local churches. They trained throughout the summer and at the beginning of September 1915 started their deployment to France. 305 Canadian soldiers are buried at Shorncliffe Military Cemetery, and school children have been honouring them since 1917. Voluntary aid detachments started in 1909. By 1914, there were over 2,500 VADs in Britain. Of the 74,000 members, 2/3 were female. At the outbreak of war, VAD members willingly offered their service. The Bevan Hospital in Sandgate was opened almost immediately upon the declaration of war. After becoming an annex of the Shorncliffe Military Hospital, it had a steady stream of troops receiving care, including military personnel from Australia, Canada, and Belgium. One feature of the hospital was an open-air ward, where cases of septic poisoning were cured. More than 12,000 patients passed through the hospital during its active period. After armistice, the demobilisation of the military was a long process. Priority was given to men who were needed at home due to their occupations, such as miners and farm workers. On the 3rd of January 1919, thousands of soldiers based at the rest camps in Folkestone began to protest. They marched through the streets in Folkestone, headed to the town hall. The soldiers aired their grievances about the bad conditions, food rations and demobilisation delays. Rest camps were military-run camps with the purpose of giving soldiers a chance to relax after a battle or a long journey. The rest camps in Folkestone were still being used by soldiers after armistice. Over 4,000 soldiers a day came through the port to go on leave. These men required somewhere to rest and eat before their journey continued. Peace celebrations started all over the country in summer 1919. Peace Day was set to 19th July, and in Folkestone, the celebrations started on the 18th with children's entertainment in Radnor Park. The people of Folkestone decorated their houses and shops to show support to the troops, who marched through the town in a parade on the 19th. It was reported that the council had set aside £1,000 for the celebrations. This displeased the locals, who thought such a large sum should not come from public funds. They would like to see donations from the wealthy landowners, who many felt had it easier during the war. In 1918, the epidemic of Spanish flu infected over 500 million people and killed more than 50 million worldwide. In the council meeting of March 1919, Councillor Jones reported the following. A member of the gas company had claimed to the public that the sulphuric smell of a gas leak had cured the flu and made Folkestone exempt from the deaths that affected so many other places.
Projects like this are really good for the community because they are inclusive. They allow people to be involved in something they wouldn't normally be involved with, and it opens their eyes to opportunities and possibilities.
So it was actually quite amazing just the sort of speed that we were able to get it done more than anything. And have stuff on the beach ready for people to start coming down having a look. And we laid out the historical information ahead of time, so it meant that people sort of were learning a bit about Folkestone sort of even before the project was finished.
The children obviously were really excited because they wanted to find their stone that they'd painted. You know, that was amazing. And they'd really invested in it. You know, I think that's the whole great thing about this project. People invested time and emotion in it. And people were stopping and they were reading the information, which really surprised me. That is the hard part, is to get people to engage in the heritage And that to us was the other strand, you know, the really important strand. I mean, this was funded through the National Heritage Lottery Fund.
I think what's really important about the project is we have those 7 stories that relate to each of those poppies. The fact that so many people have got involved and have been touched in some way by that. After all, the project is called Lasting Memories. In some ways that reflects the stories and what we're trying to tap into from the past, where what were left from World War I are personal stories and also photographic images. And this is exactly what we're going to see from this. There's no physical result from this long term. It's purely those memories that will hopefully stay in people's minds.